The Girl by Leah V. Art by Sammy J. The Girl Part 2. The Golden City. Our last moments with the girl from Part 1. The Valley. She had not been made to muster the strength for the journey on her own. The addition of the horse and his quickening ability to her situation had changed everything. Hope began to rise inside of her that what lay ahead in the city would prove to be the same. Not something to dread, but something to behold. Her grip upon the horse's mane turned more into a warm embrace. So grateful was she for the friendly help that had been sent her way, and not just for the fact that the horse could carry her the whole journey, but more for the strength his presence had poured into the weak places of her heart. This helped her to brace for that which might lie ahead at the end of the path. With that realization, she saw the base of the two mountains approaching. Chapter 9. The girl sat by the side of the path, waiting. Night had fallen as they approached the mouth of the two mountains. The path had narrowed, and the horse had left her at the side of the road, promising to return for her shortly. She was happy to have a moment to stretch her legs from the long journey, and walked a bit back and forth as the horse trotted ahead. It was difficult to see clearly in the muted light of the dusk-painted sky. But as she watched the horse approach the base of the two mountains ahead of her, she could make out the sight of a beautiful golden gate stretching the entire expanse of the entryway between the two mountains. The gate, taller than it was wide, had steep mountain walls on each side. It would have been difficult for anyone to try to climb into this city uninvited. The girl let out a small gasp at the gate's sheer size and at its intricate beauty. The golden metal seemed to be shaped into a beautiful piece of art, rather than a foreboding barrier. As she watched the horse arrive, she saw candles starting to flicker and give off light from various parts of the gate. As this happened, all the gold on the gate began to glow as a beacon of light between those two mountains. She saw a woman approached from the other side of the gate inside the city. Even at a distance, the girl could see this was the most beautiful woman she had ever seen. The girl was instantly intrigued by her and longed to be closer to this woman. Who was she? But she waited as she had been instructed, as the horse and the woman discussed something at great length. The girl's gaze moved past the ornamental gate to something else that also glowed, far off in the distance. As she focused, she could see what looked to be huge spires or pillars, situated at the very center of the city. They too were golden and glowing in the twilight of the night sky. There were at least a dozen of these spires in various shapes and sizes, but all of them were very high, towering above the rest of the city below. The highest one of them all seemed to reach right into the sky. As she gazed up to the tops of these pillars far beyond, she noticed all the stars that shone in the sky next to them. She was startled at the quantity of them all. So vast was their number shining in the sky, that they created blankets and ribbons of light above. She stood basking in the beauty of their light show, and then she began to realize that the golden pillars' glow came from these very stars. Each star pointed its light directly toward the tall spires. Each spire in return reflected the light back out, causing the gold to glow with the reflected starlight above. Something about this starlight process made her laugh with joy and delight, and it also made her want to cry. It was beautiful. There was something about those spires that caused the stars to shine not just all their light, but also all their love in their direction. What was it about them that captured the star's attention so? The light of the girl's heart also began drawing closer to the spires beyond, but she was quickly drawn back to the path at the sound of the horse's hooves approaching, and a soft whinny saying, "Follow me, there is someone you must meet." Chapter 10. The woman who had spoken with the horse stood at the gate. Her beauty was captivating, and the light of her smile made the blanket of stars pale in comparison. Her long, dark waves fell in cascading layers around her face and down her back. Her golden eyes accentuated the sapphire blue dress she wore, which also sparkled with light. As beautiful as she was, it was her kindness and humility that drew the girl in closer, until the woman finally embraced her. Pulling back with a wide smile, she looked at the girl saying, "Welcome, child. Welcome to the Golden City. I'm so happy to finally be meeting you. They told me all about you." "Who told you?" the girl asked, quite confused. "Why, the lion and ox, of course. We are the closest of friends. They told me you would be coming soon." Again, the girl looked confused. "They knew you would choose the love in your heart over the fear in your mind. They are both very fond of you, you know." The woman smiled kindly at the girl. "So I know I shall be too." She continued saying, "I am Sagcheese, the keeper of this gate, but you may call me Sage, as everyone else in this city does." At this, the girl began to feel very embarrassed and insecure, for she had no name to offer in return. But Sage smiled at her reassuringly, already knowing the girl's thoughts. "Not to worry, dear one. I know one of the purposes of your journey here is to find the answer to that question. But in the meantime, why don't I call you mon chéri? For I can tell already that you are most precious. Now come with me. I have arranged for you to stay with me at my house." Chapter 11. The next morning, the girl stood outside Sage's home. Sage stood by her side as the girl said goodbye to the horse. She hugged his long head, petting his velvety nose affectionately. "Don't worry, we will see each other again. But for now, I am off to assist on another's journey." She kissed his nose and whispered in his ear, holding back tears. "Thank you, Nisi. I never would have made it without you." He winked at her, saying, "Well, you would have made it here eventually, but it would have taken you quite some time." He smiled with a slight bow of his head at her. She backed away, expecting the horse to gallop away. But to her surprise, he leapt up into the air, spinning as wings unfurled around him. The rotation of his wings unwrapped and spread out as he soared off into the sky. His appearance changed more to that of a man than of a horse. He flew into the sapphire blue sky, to an area above the golden spires that she had seen the night before. The area of sky directly above these pillars was an iridescent rainbow in the midst of the sky. Not just an arc of a rainbow, but an entire sphere directly above the pillars. Nisi flew up and disappeared inside the rainbow. Along with him, dozens of other winged creatures flew in and out of the sphere. Where they went, she knew not. The girl looked at Sage, bewildered, and in awe at everything she had just witnessed. "I know there is so much you do not yet understand about this place, but it will all make sense in time," Sage told her lovingly. "I have much to show you in this city, mon chéri, much to teach you, and so many to introduce to you. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First things first. I think some new clothes are in order, yes? And perhaps after, a tour of the city." The girl looked down at her garments. She had not realized before that her clothes were dirty and tattered. She looked up at Sage, who wore a light blue sundress that again sparkled with light. "Oh yes, please, that all sounds wonderful." Chapter 12. The girl stood looking at herself for the first time. The reflection in the mirror showed a blonde young lady with sharp green eyes. Her cheeks and lips were gently kissed with the color of a dusky rose. She smiled a bit as she twirled her new dress back and forth. Sage had picked out for her a lovely soft yellow dress that caught just above her knees. The material was as soft as air, with small white etchings all along the trim. "Lovely, mon chéri," crooned the woman. She came closer and placed a tiny garland of small white flowers upon the girl's head. The garland peeked out from the girl's blonde, wavy tresses. Then Sage adorned her again, this time placing a single tiny, long gold chain around the girl's neck. It hung just above her navel. The girl glanced down at her bare feet. "There is no need for shoes, chérie, for there is nothing in the city that will cause your feet to stumble." The girl smiled, looking back up to her reflection in the mirror. Sage stood behind, gazing at her. Then for a moment, the girl saw her own appearance change to reflect the beauty of sag cheese. She jumped back a bit surprised. The image in the mirror turned back to that of the blonde-haired, green-eyed girl. The woman smiled, saying, "Yes, there is a bit of me inside of you. Thank you for accepting my adornments upon your head and around your neck. It brings me great joy to see you wearing them." The girl smiled bashfully. She could not find the words to express her deep gratitude. "Now that I've prepared you, I believe it's time to show you around the city." Chapter 13. The rest of the day was spent touring the beautiful golden city. The girl held Sage's hand and stayed close to her side the entire time. The golden spires were at the very center and heart of the city, and everything else was built out in a circumference from there. The city truly was something to behold, but that did not matter. It was not the purpose for which the girl journeyed, and she began to feel as much. She held the woman's hand, taking in all the sights while feeling her heart being drawn towards something else. To what? She did not yet know. Sage glanced at her smiling, knowing what was drawing her attention, and that it was all a part of the journey. High up in the sapphire sky above, someone else watched the girl with a focused eye. He circled and circled, watching and waiting until it was his time to come. He called out an eagle's sharp cry. The sound did not reach the girl's ears, but her heart leapt with understanding. And so, the great eagle began his descent. Chapter 14. The girl began to feel very anxious. Sage turned with her knowing eyes to listen. "Dear Sage, I don't mean to seem rude or ungrateful. This tour is so kind of you, and your city is so beautiful. But I feel there is something else drawing me, beckoning me to hasten my steps." "Yes," Sage replied. "It is the purpose for which you came, and I know just who can bring you there." Sage raised her gaze to the sky, and the girl's eyes quickly followed. They saw a dark spot far up in the distance begin to fall. Rapidly, it dropped in their direction. As it approached, it was all flapping golden feathers and wind in the girl's face. As the flurry settled down and the creature took its shape, the girl lay eyes on the eagle, who unbeknownst to her had just been watching her from above a moment earlier. The eagle stood as tall as a man. His wide muscular chest heaved from his rapid descent. He was covered from head to tail in beautiful golden feathers that glistened in the light. His black eyes were piercing, as if he could see right into the thoughts of her heart. The girl was a bit taken aback by the abruptness of the change, but she felt the longing that had been in her heart a few moments ago begin to calm. Sage, loving the rush of it all, laughed as she watched the girl take it all in. She greeted the creature. "My dear eagle," she said while embracing him affectionately. He bowed his head. A kind softness lit up his face as he replied, "It is my honor, Sagchis." Sage blushed and bowed her head slightly at the sound of her full name. She turned to the girl. "And this," she said to the eagle, "is the one we've been waiting for. She's grown quite anxious to get where she's going." The eagle stood up tall, towering above both the girl and the woman. He focused his sharp gaze on the girl, studying her for a moment. He asked her, "Pray, tell, what is your purpose here, girl? Why have you come to this city?" The girl took a deep breath, focusing herself. It had been such a whirlwind journey getting here that she had almost forgotten why she came. But then she smiled, remembering his kind, sad eyes. "I'm here to help a friend," she replied. "I had to leave the comfort of the valley, but the lion told me that if I came, he would take me to his father's house, for he holds the answers to the questions I seek. But I have yet to see the lion since I arrived." She trailed off in thought. Where was the lion? At that she began fighting back tears. The eagle narrowed his black eyes, studying her a moment longer. He erupted in a joyful and warm chuckle. His golden wings spread out to welcome the girl for a warm embrace. "Dear girl," he cried, "that is precisely why I am here, to take you the rest of the way. That is, unless you know how to fly yourself," he said, winking at her. "Fly? Why would we need to fly?" the girl asked, looking bewildered. "Because," the eagle replied, "the lion and his father live in those golden spires at the center of the city. The only door in is at the very top of those spires. So, if you want in, you must know how to fly. Or you must know someone who does." He finished, winking at her again. The girl gulped, looking in the direction of the spires. They stretched high into the sky. The tallest of them almost disappeared inside the rainbow sphere that she had seen Nisi fly into just a short time ago. "That is quite high," she quietly breathed out. "Yes, just the way I like it," the eagle replied, with yet another wink in her direction. She was quickly learning that he was quite the tease. Chapter 15. Of all the runs with the lion, and of all the rides on the horse's back, nothing had prepared the girl for her flight with the eagle. Soaring high above the city now, the spires reflected their light at them each time they circled past, for that is how an eagle flies. Flap, flap, circle. Flap, flap, circle. With each flap, she could feel the strength of the eagle's wings pushing them up. The wind whipped through her golden wavy hair. With each circle, she could almost feel the eagle's wings lock into place as they soared on the wind up to the next height. The girl didn't remember the takeoff, as her eyes had been shut tight, her face buried in feathers as she clung to the eagle's back. But she did remember her farewell to Sagchis. Sagchis's kind eyes looked into hers as she said, "Not to worry, mon chéri, this is not really a goodbye. Remember, there is a part of me that lives in you." And she touched the golden necklace around the girl's neck to remind her of the gift. The girl smiled at the memory. At that moment, the eagle let out a piercing, sharp cry. As only an eagle can, they soared up another level. It was the height of their journey that day. They approached the tops of the rainbow sphere. The girl reached out her hands as they flew by. Her fingers danced through the colors of the rainbow's light. To her surprise, each color vibrated back a sound with each curious touch through their light. The eagle lifted her up higher still, so her head began to pass through the rainbow with a symphony of light and sound. It was dazzling and unlike anything she had ever heard or seen before. She began to hear in the distance a memory of a sparkling creek that sang, "Stay, stay here and play." But just as quickly as he brought her in, the eagle began to descend and take her out. "That was amazing!" she cried out to the eagle. He answered back with a short, happy eagle's cry. She saw an almost blinding golden glimmer as they started to approach one of the golden spires. In fact, it was the tallest of all the spires in the golden city. There was a large terrace at almost the very top of it, and that is where they made their landing. Chapter 16. On the golden terrace, high upon that spire, there he stood. It was the lion. Her lion! The girl quickly slid off the golden wings. She was scarcely aware of anything else until she was lost in the wild golden mane of her lion. She once again breathed in his wild scent as she heard his deep, comforting purr. Feeling that same sense of being home, the way she had upon their first meeting in the valley, she briefly pulled away just long enough to look at his large face, savoring their long-awaited reunion. On the terrace ledge, the eagle looked knowingly at the lion. He took his bow and then swiftly took his exit over the spire's side, back into the sky. "My dear, dear girl, I knew you would come." The look of pride on the lion's face towards the girl made her heart swell with delight. She fell back into his soft mane for another embrace. "I've missed you," she whispered. "And I you," he purred in return. That is how it remained for quite some time, as they enjoyed the sweetness of their companionship. Had that been the only thing she had come for, it all would have been worth it. The lion held her heart so, but other eyes, sadder eyes, oxen eyes began to flash inside her mind, and then also eyes of another, but these were eyes she had never seen before. Eyes full of love, passion, power, kindness, and life. They were overwhelming, and she held on tighter to the lion's mane at their sight. The lion broke their silence, saying, "Yes, it is not only I you have journeyed here for. There is another whom you have not yet encountered to behold, and I will not be one to keep you from him any longer. All you need to know is there is nothing to fear, for he is love." Her lion led her through a golden door. It was the only door that led into the tallest spire. Chapter 17. As the door closed, everything went dark. She felt the lion step away as he said, "Do not be afraid. By your side I will stay." Her heart was stilled, for she had learned his words were worth more than all the gold in this city. The girl stood there in the darkness waiting for what she did not yet know. A soft breeze began to stir. It sweetly swept across her face. As it reached her ears, she heard a faint whisper on the wind. She quieted her heart, focusing to hear the words as the breeze caressed her face once more. She could barely make out the words. Then the soft breeze began picking up its pace. Starting at her feet and swirling all around her now, she was quickly caught up in a torrent, to her surprise. As she stood in the whipping wind, she began to see flickers of colored light: purple, magenta, blue, yellow, gold, and green. They all flickered and seemed to get caught up as ribbons of colored light in the whirlwind around her until she was completely surrounded by a torrent of swirling colors. It was breathtakingly beautiful and ignited in the girl an invigorated delight. Then she heard the whisper, again, El hell. As it grew louder, the storm around her calmed. The wind and colors did not stop their dance around her. She ceased to feel their effects, and in the calm of that storm, she heard the voice again. This time, it was crystal clear, as it rang out in a deep, soothing voice. Ellie, Ellie. Then the voice thundered one last time. Ellie, here am I, the girl cried back. Raising her hands above her head, she could feel the colored wind begin whipping around her as she cried out again. Here am I, it is me, Ellie. And with that, everything stopped. The torrent, the colors, the whisper in the wind. All was replaced by a golden shining light that filled the entire space. She felt herself being pulled in very close to this golden light by two large, unseen hands. As she was drawn closer, she began to see a face emerge in the bright light. All she could really make out were a pair of kind eyes and a large, warm smile. Everything else about the form was shrouded in the radiance of the golden light, emanating all around. She was lost and undone in the kindness and love she saw in those eyes. They smiled more deeply at her as she realized she was wholly and fully loved beyond compare. Never had she felt more joy or peace than at that moment with those eyes. Not in the valley, not with Sag Cheese, not even with her lion or her ox. She began to laugh and laugh as joy bubbled up from inside of her. The kind eyes and smile laughed with her, as well as joy and love permeated every inch of the space. Who are you? The girl finally cried out. I am! As the voice spoke, the room was overcome by the radiance of the golden light. Its flash was so bright that she could no longer see any hint of the face. It was washed out in brilliant light. I am the Father of Lights! The flashes of color she had seen in the wind before began flashing in and out of the golden light. And you are Ellie, for you are one who has been brought with great purpose to this place. She saw another pair of eyes, kind, sad, familiarly burdened eyes. They were those of her ox, and the girl, Ellie, began to cry at their sight. Who will help him? Who will go? Will you go? Ellie, will you go? I will go, Father, I will go, Ellie cried out in reply. Chapter 18. She was seemingly plucked up, out of nowhere, and placed in the center of two very large hands. So large were the hands, they seemed to go on and on forever. She could see no end to them. And all around her, above and below, lay the cosmos, planets, stars, and galaxies in all various shapes and colors. All were whizzing past her at a rapid rate, as if she were moving at light speed inside these infinite hands. But she could see every detail of each galaxy as it passed by on display for her. There were hundreds, or even thousands maybe. They were impossible to count, so great were their number. Beautiful and wonderful to behold. Their light captured and permeated her entire being. She felt invigorated, humbled, and infinitely loved all at the same time. Such a large universe, such a small girl, all in such capable hands. This is where it all began. Epilogue. The The girl awoke with a start. She lay in bed and looked around her room. Had it all been a dream? It had felt so real. How could that be? She closed her eyes tightly as disappointment began lurking in and around her. But as she closed her eyes, they were there. Those eyes, kind, joyful, and love-filled. And then a golden shaggy mane began to come into view. Go, for we are here with you. That concludes The Girl Part 2, The Golden City. Thank you for joining us along the girl's journey. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel in order to stay connected to all of the adventures by Leah Vey. Here you will also find The Girl, Part 1, The Valley. The full story in book form can be purchased on Amazon. Just click the link provided.